Hello and welcome to Happy Hour again, coming to you today from the beautiful social distancing home studios located in Ventura and Camarillo, California.
All right, and welcome back to Happy Hour again. We are all sorts of all over the road right now. We are like a car with no steering wheel, just trying to find our way between the lanes. I got Curtis Taylor doing his little best driving expression. We got Joby Yobi hiding under the hood and the cap outside, banished and quarantined from even his own household. Tonight, we're celebrating our 50th show. We're goofing off and having a good time talking about all things beer and all things Happy Hour again / Happy Hour, because the show didn't used to be called Happy Hour again. At one point, it was just Happy Hour when we first launched. We're talking in this last segment about our favorite shows from the past 50 shows. Joby, you've got a zinger.
Oh yeah, my favorite show is the show that never happened, and I don't even know what episode that was, but we've actually, Curtis, we've kind of digressed. We used to have a studio.
Right, I know. And now
we're just in our own living rooms, for Christ's sake. Joby's outside, for damn it. Poor Joby.
We used to have a studio. If broadcasting live from the Majestic Ventura Theater, we were literally in the right next door to the Majestic Ventura Theater. A very nice 805. Was it 805 Live?
It was Buzz Studios.
Buzz Studios. Sorry, 805 Live was that Tom Hillen?
Was Tom?
The BC Buzz.
Yeah.
BC Buzz. So anyway, my favorite episode was Tyler Clark from Libertine. Came all the way down from Morro Bay, actually, ironically.
Right.
And we meet at Barrel House. We have a beer, and then we're like, hey, let's walk over to our studio because we're so impressed. We were very impressive. We like
with white chairs for nonetheless.
Yeah, white couch, and white chair.
It's very swank.
And I think the sex show was right after us, so it was very fitting. We get the booze going. And then
For those of you who are not aware, there was a sex show that followed the Happy Hour show.
I think, and to be clear, I believe it was a sex discussion show. I don't believe it was actually a sex show.
Wow.
Like
point of order,
I don't think there was any donkey punch or anything else happening there. I think it was just
Curtis.
Point of order, Your Honor. There was no sexual acts occurring on the show. It was just a discussion.
Yes. I can vouch for that. We did stick around a couple of times, and there was no actual sex going on.
Joby was waiting around for the action to start.
Well, I mean, we had all the drinks on the table, so the talent from the next show would come in and be like, "Oh, can I get one of those?" And, yeah, no problem. Anyway, we were locked out of the studio that day, so we were super embarrassed. We were like, "Oh, it should be fine, man. I'm sure somebody's here." We don't have a key to our own studio, of course. Why would there be some sort of electronic way to get in or anything? No, we were locked out. It was completely dark in there. And then Tyler, we barely know Tyler. And you're probably like, what the fuck is going on, right? And then how long did we stay? It's been a long time. I don't remember. Did we stay a while? Did we call people? We called people and nobody answered, of course.
Right.
Anyway, so we walked back to the restaurant with our tails between our legs, as they say, and we ended up having beers with Tyler, and we had a great time. And but that was my favorite show. It never even happened.
Right, and we kept talking about getting up there to do a show, and actually that was the show that was the moment where we decided between you and I, and maybe it wasn't even spoken, maybe it was just unspoken, like, yeah, we got to take this into our own hands. And then that's when I bought a mixing board like the next week, and then we were off at Barrel House. But I do want to give a shout out to Kelly. Shayna, Kelly, and John, who were all those the VC Buzz people, because I can't even remember. I mean, somebody was talking at that point. I was doing some stuff on 805 Live, or with Thomas Andy, I guess it was what it was at that time.
Yeah.
And then somebody said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I'm like, I've been thinking about Joby. And then somebody talked to you about it, and they were like, yeah, I think this would be okay, that we could do this. And there you go. It's just kind of,
it really was a convergence. And that's how I got him, because Curtis, you and I were doing the Tom and Sandy 805 show. We had our own little segments there, and you were talking about this endeavor you were picking up with Joby. I'm like, that sounds really cool. And you asked me to do the Pints and Pairing show, which was just beer and food. And I was so intrigued by the concept of being behind the mic. I started showing up at the Happy Hour with Joby and Curtis show. And you guys like, oh yeah, no problem. Hook up some mics, do a couple things. And the more equipment I hooked up, the longer I lingered behind the mic. I'm like, hey,
That's right.
guys, mind if I just talk right now?
So what's funny about all that is that podcasts are huge now, and the whole world of streaming content and podcast content is huge. And honestly, it was a little ahead of its time back then. If we're gonna go down memory lane, it really was, and it could have been something really, really big. As far as like a local curation of podcasts, I guess is a way to put it. It was Beastie Buzz was going to be this local website where all these local podcasts would be on, and you could go on there and listen live, but you could also go on and listen to the archive later. And so it was way ahead of its time. It was internet radio station, I guess is the best way to put it. And it was fun. It was cool to be on that kind of first wave, and being in the studio made it very official, and people would walk by and line up to go to the concert. So it was pretty cool. Everybody would peek inside.
Right, and see us talk. Yeah, I forgot about that. That when there were concerts, that everyone would be lined up outside the
we really kind of were in a fishbowl.
Yeah, except that everybody knows the acoustics are really bad at the Ventura Theater, and so when there was a loud concert, you could hear it inside the studio.
Right.
So it was not a soundproof studio.
No.
It was more of a lounge.
It was kind of a lounge.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
It was cool.
Curtis, what's on your list right now? What's your highlight?
Well, one of the things that I was looking at as I was going through it is I talked about Montalvo tequila earlier on, about how I learned how to taste tequila. The other really important thing was that I learned how to make a jalapeno margarita, which was, it still blows my mind. It was jalapenos and
cucumbers.
If you look at if you go to happyhouragain.com, you can find that recipe for sure. I was thinking about Wade's Wines for a little bit, which was a really shaky start to begin with, but we got it going. And then
I was definitely a roadie on that show, and we got pushed to the side on that one, and we weren't even the highlight of that event.
Right. We had when we had Alex from Refined Distillery. So it was at the time it was Brandy's, I think.
Yeah, California brandy.
Right, and then but like their rye whiskey is still one of my favorite whiskeys of all time. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Heretic or the Barrel Works shows. Like those were epic shows.
Yeah, those are big
at
ones.
Barrel House.
The Heretic show was awesome. That's actually, I'm glad you brought that one up. That was cool. And the Barrel Works show. The Heretic show for me was like, it felt like the beer geekiness, because I came from Lagunitas and we came straight back, and then we did the Heretic show, and I was just like, oh man, this is awesome. Like, so much good beer, and he was a great guest. Jamil is awesome.
Yeah, well, and
that's what's great about those shows is that we partner it with the, like you said, the Barrel Works and our Firestone shows, where we had some really key influencers to the beer industry. And Jamil Zanishev having that Heretic show, I mean, he's a huge influence to so many different facets of the brewing industry, including the Brewing Network. I mean, he's one of the original personalities on the Brewing Network. Hopefully, I'm knocking on wood, I'm trying to reach out to those guys and bring them on the show. So if you're listening, if you have any affiliation with the Brewing Network, we want to get those guys on to Happy Hour again. But really having Jamil in the back room, in the banquet room of Barrel House 101, I not even just from a show standpoint, but having affiliations with the restaurant was a highlight. I mean, thinking about the influence that some of these individuals have had on the brewing industry, I feel really proud to be part of that. And, the three of us have experienced some really cool individuals.
Right. All right, Jason, what Curtis, do you have another favorite show?
No, well, yeah, because I want to Bogart all the
Curtis
time.
Curtis keeps gushing.
There was one show in particular though that changed my life experiences, because I never liked Bloody Marys, and we did an entire show dedicated to Bloody Marys. And so, Joby, you kept telling me, "Oh no, you haven't tried our Bloody Marys. You haven't tried ours." And then I tried it, and I liked it, because generally people would just put in ghost pepper essence, whatever. Like, why would I want to drink something that burns me from my throat all the way out my ass? Like, that does not sound like a good drink. So we ended up trying a couple. We tried 4 or 5 of them, and it was your like the Barrel House 101's version. We did the Bloody Derby, which was a bourbon, and so replacing vodka with bourbon. We did the Red Snapper or the Ruddy Mary, which was replacing gin with the vodka, or replacing the vodka with gin. The Bloody Pirate, which was spiced dark rum, and then the Bloody Maria, which was tequila. Now, all of these were interesting, but I put a note at the very bottom of this post that said, "Note to self: do not mix the Bloody Pirate ever again."
That was disgusting.
Which was the spiced rum Bloody Mary,
Captain
and that was
Morgan,
so bad.
Captain Morgan Bloody Mary. It's so disgusting.
That's right up there with those like college days or young independent where you look back at yourself and go, what were you thinking? Why?
Yeah, I mean, we vowed to try every one on the list, and that we saw that one, and we still were like, okay, fine, let's try it.
Yeah. So if you go to bloodymary.com, if you go to Happy Hour, I'm sure
again,
there is Bloody that's true. If you go to if you go to happyhouragain.com, you can see the other versions. There were 7 other ones that we did not get time to taste, and let us know what your thoughts are. But like the Bloody Marine, which is replacing Guinness, like the Guinness instead of vodka. The Bloody Molly, which is Irish whiskey. The Bloody Scotsman. Like it just goes on.
The gin was good. The gin was good. I remember that.
Yeah.
Tequila was all right. The Bloody Maria was good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the Bloody Pirate, that's out.
That's out.
It's
out.
Never
Ever
do that.
Never ever make that again.
All right, Jason.
Well, and there's something
I
mean, when you mix tomato juice, like you just got to be very careful with what you're throwing into the glass. You know, we were talking about the Wade's wine. I remember I started out kind of as a roadie. I just kind of inserted myself into the guy that was going to help carry equipment and find a way to be part of the show because I was excited about what you guys were doing. And I know that the Wade's wines, we were in like this little corner high top, and we felt like we were pushed to the side. They didn't really know why we were there. I don't think there was communication. So just in terms of like one of those experiences where you go, what the hell happened? That's top of the list. But what I really loved was the weird driving episode. And unfortunately, Joby, you were not part of this episode. You and Curtis talked to me and said, hey, I'm not going to be here. Can you sit in? And I remember that one because they had us doing breathalyzers throughout the show. We were monitoring our alcohol content and our intake. And I had never been subjected to a breathalyzer before. Just so the way I was seeing the number go up, it was like one of those comical things, but also inside I was like, oh, holy shit. Like when I've been out at the clubs in Santa Barbara, this is actually what's happening. And it was interesting to really sit with Israel and Laura Martinez from We're Driving at the time and see the impact of what our intake, but also the show was having on us. Every week we were doing a show, and it was like, we're consuming alcohol on some level every week, and this is what's going on inside. It was pretty cool and also a little unnerving.
And that's why Israel and was my favorite person. That's We're Driving. That's WERE driving.com.
It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere.
It's so embedded. I love it. The commercial is ingrained in Curtis's cranium.
Wait, Jason, did you partake in We're Driving that night, or did you just walk home? What?
I just walked home at that point. I didn't have to worry about it. I just walked home. But, you know, it was a cool experience. It was interesting to see the effects. It was interesting to see the commentary. Yeah. And, you know, some nights we were just having such a good time. It didn't really occur to me what we drank, or, you know, when you walk out the door, you're kind of like, yeah, it was a great night, just like any other jackass coming out of the bar. And it was really enlightening to experience what Laura and Israel had. The other one I'll throw out there, I mean, again, we've had some really cool ones. That we've had some bottle shares. We did some really cool vertical flights with some influential beer people. But Daryl's couch on Daryl's couch. Like, there's something about sitting in the namesake of the bar and talking about all things beverage with the guy whose namesake is on the marquee.
Right, and if Daryl's
I would throw it to you, Joby.
Yeah, if Daryl's out there somewhere listening, you know, it's I can't remember. I think Camarillo Craft or something now is the name change.
Yeah.
But that was that was maybe our first remote, possibly.
It was one of the first. Jason, I do remember that show. It was Daryl's couch was right next to the. It wasn't like a sports, like a soccer thing.
Right,
Yes.
right at the bottom of the grade in Camarillo.
It's like the tiniest little strip mall ever.
Yeah,
just at the bottom of the
strip
grade.
mall. Yeah, the weirdest strip mall ever, like random.
Right. Yeah, there's this little housing complex over there, and for locals, you'll know that the Springs fire, that was Camarillo Springs, that's where it was. And then we had rain like the next week, and then there was a landslide there which like buried backyards right up to their back door. Luckily, there were no houses that were covered up.
It was the convergence of all the Lord's plagues, right? In the little spot.
Right. Well, but I remember that I had invited some guests to that, and we had small speakers thinking that was going to be enough and it just was, nobody could hear us. And so I looked behind me real quick too, because I've got the big box speaker that I have, like the monitor speaker that we used later on. But it was, that was one of those first ones kind of out in the middle of nowhere, or like out remote kind of things that we did. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't reminisce about episode number 1, Ouroboros, Nick Velasquez, which we did. We've mentioned it a couple times already, but I have listened to that show a couple of times, and it's really wonderful.
It is.
Check it out. It's on happyhouragain.com. Again, in the original episode March 8th, 2013.
Episode 1 in the studio. So the funny part about that episode is that we have a guest, but we've never done a show in the studio, so we have no idea how to work anything. But we have our first guest on, so it's like it was pretty interesting.
Episode of Growing Pains right there.
It was, and I was reminded of Ouroboros Ales when we were talking to Kelly and Tina a few weeks ago from Paradise Pantry, when we were talking about cheese pairings, because he had a brown ale that was fantastic.
It was fantastic.
And when I looked through those cheese pairings, there were a number of the cheeses that I paired his brown ale with, which, you find a great tasting brown ale and you can probably substitute it, but that was one that I was really specifically looking for, all those flavor profiles. So Nick,
like every great artist who goes through a period, Curtis had a brown ale phase.
He paired everything with brown ales. You're right. So,
this is delicious.
Episode 1.
So was it the cheese? Was it the brown ale, or was it just Curtis's mentality?
If you want to hear some really raw,
in my defense, I also paired that with an IPA. So I kind of went to both opposite ends. But really, does it matter with cheese in beer? It really doesn't. It's just like drink a beer.
I can go over some cheese and beer right now.
Right.
Just eat some cheese and drink some beer. I think that's how we sign off. Eat some cheese and drink some beer.
I love it.
And as true to every episode, that's the next T-shirt slogan right there.
Eat some cheese and drink some beer.
To sign off, let's eat some cheese and drink some beer.
I love it. It sounds good actually right now too.
So from Joby at an undisclosed location, Curtis at the
basement of institution. The basement of institution.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm Jason over here in my apartment studio, just like our roots, where it's all hodgepodge of equipment and theory and beverage. We're having a great time. Keep joining us for Happy Hour again every Monday. We like to say we're broadcasting at 7:30, but it's usually more like 7:45, and gives you opportunity to fill your glass, get ready for the show, line up your great stories about beverage, and have a great time. Joby, Curtis, Jason, happyhouragain.com. Happy to have you guys here. We just had our 50th episode. We're looking forward to more. Join us every week.
Right.
All right.
And real quick before we go, anyone who's still hanging out, check out happyhour.com for our calendar. We've got a full slate lined up all the way through September. So check it out. And
really cool episodes.
Right. Next week, we'll be talking about the history of brewing in Milwaukee. So we've got a Milwaukee brewing historian coming on. So, it's always something new. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, cheers, everybody. Have yourselves a good night. Happy hour again.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Happy Hour. We'll be back next week with more questionable content, great guests, and drinks all around.